I wake up and go to work with the same folks at the same location. The car I drive to work is nicer now, and my house is a tiny bit nicer now, but other than that, nothing has changed. Working with the elderly man is perhaps the most challenging aspect of my job. Did you know that Corey Harrison became extremely wealthy after Richard the Old Man Harrison passed away? It wasn't only the end of an era. A secret tale of wealth, inheritance, and startling family twists is buried behind Pawn Stars' success. What did Corey's renowned grandfather actually leave him? And who was the will's covert omission? The truth is more shocking than fans may think, ranging from expensive cars to fortunes that change people's lives. The 9 amazing things Corey got from the elderly man, including trade secrets that money cannot purchase, are shown in this video. 9. Work ethic. His unwavering work ethic was the most distinctive quality that Richard, the elderly Harrison, instilled in his grandson, Corey. The elderly guy had a strong belief in the importance of hard labor, which he developed from decades of personal hardship, military duty, and entrepreneurial perseverance. His path from Navy veteran to co-founder of the renowned gold and silver pawn store was paved with perseverance, self-control, and a determination to never take the easy route. Interestingly, the elderly guy had a reputation for being steadfast in his commitment to his work. According to reports, he hadn't missed a day of work since 1994, a record that came to represent his personality. That degree of dedication was motivated by pride in his work and the fulfillment that comes from doing honest work, not by need. Growing up with such an example made a lasting influence on Corey. He learned that perseverance and hard work, rather than skill or good fortune, are the keys to success. From seeing his grandfather arrive every morning, rain or shine, healthy or exhausted, early adoption of this idea led Corey to start at the bottom of the pawn shop and work his way up through the years by observation and hard effort. He was never given advantages by the elderly man merely because he was related. He made Corey work hard and be responsible in order to earn his spot. Corey felt more accountable and proud of his work as a result of this tough love method. He eventually began to adopt his grandfather's habits of being early, staying late, and even paying close attention to every transaction he did. Like the elderly man, Corey discovered that the greatest reward for putting in a lot of effort is not only money, but also respect at the end of the day, since you know you put your all into it. Despite being well known through Pawn Stars, Corey remained depressed about Earth as his grandfather described it. For without the daily exercise to maintain them, reputation and accomplishment meant nothing. The elderly man's steadfastness in the face of adversity further demonstrated his commitment to this lesson. He and his spouse were in financial servitude after leaving the Navy, and they once lost a significant portion of their funds as a result of the 1980s real estate bubble. Instead, the old guy got up and started building a gold and silver coin shop from the ground up, which eventually expanded into an empire of pawn shops. Corey learned that failure is not final as long as you don't give up. Because of his resilience and ability to start over with nothing, he learned from the old guy to face hardship head-on and view obstacles as chances to demonstrate one's resilience. This is shown throughout Corey's career. The ups and downs have only strengthened his resolve. He has also persevered through the difficult times with a purpose, just like his grandfather. Wait until you see what happened next if you believe Corey became wealthy as a result of the elderly man's passing. It's not real. 8. Leadership and the boss persona. Richard the Old Man Harrison's distinct boss persona was one of his distinguishing characteristics, setting the tone for all employees at the gold and silver pawn business with a forceful yet calm leadership style. The old man's authority as the head of the family and the company stemmed from discipline, experience, and an unchanging sense of justice, rather than from intimidation. He was regarded by his family and staff not just because he was a strict boss, but also because he held himself to the same standards as others. He exuded a composed, confident demeanor whether he was interacting with customers, overseeing inventory, or arbitrating disputes within the store. This strategy eventually evolved into a model for how Harrison Empire leadership ought to appear. His grandson Corey was the one who most fully acquired and subsequently lived this leadership approach out of all the people who worked with him. Since he first started working at the shop, Corey has seen the elderly guy exercise authority while maintaining a kind demeanor, even though he was harsh when needed. The old man's humor and caustic wit helped to lighten the tone. Corey learned that respect and approachability are key components of effective leadership from the combination of these two qualities. As a result, Corey's own character began to develop steadily in line with the old man's example when it came time for him to assume greater responsibility, particularly as the old man was starting to step back from day-to-day activities. Corey's move into a full-time managing position at the gold and silver pawn shop, where he was in charge of day-to-day operations, staff supervision, and important business decisions, finally made that transfer a reality. He developed his leadership style over years of observing the elderly guy handle difficult circumstances with composure and decisiveness. Similar to his grandfather, Corey had a strict and strong leadership style. Since Corey witnessed it firsthand when an employee was not meeting expectations, he discovered that a successful firm is built on a number of tough decisions, frequently regrettable, but always timely. Just as the old guy would have rendered the same decision, he had no qualms about dismissing them. In addition to occasionally using a heavy hand, Corey believed that caring for his staff was essential. Leading by example was a philosophy that the old man had always promoted, and Corey upheld it by mentoring his employees through difficult times and rewarding effort when it was due. This combination of being fair and tough earned Corey respect as a capable leader in his own right, in addition to being the boss's grandson. Under his excellent leadership, the shop was doing well, despite having sleeplessness and continuing to be one of the most prosperous pawn shops in the world. The family estate is number 7. The family estate was one of the most important aspects of Richard Harrison's legacy when he died, a home that came to symbolize both his material prosperity and the close ties that bound the Harrison family together. There was more to the estate than a mansion. It was a testament to years of arduous labor, tenacity, and the benefits of creating something significant from modest beginnings. The old man's ability to give his family such a home was a feat in and of itself. He had come from humble beginnings in North Carolina and later opened the renowned gold and silver pawn store in Las Vegas. In order to preserve the family's material and spiritual legacy, the estate was divided among his surviving family members upon his death, with Corey Harrison, his grandson and longtime Pawn Stars co-star, receiving a portion of the estate. Rick Harrison, Corey's father and the old man's son, was appointed as the estate's primary executive, responsible for its administration and maintenance. Corey's inclusion as a co-owner was purely symbolic and fictitious, the passing of the torch from one generation to the next, an indication that the elderly man was honoring Corey's loyalty and faith in the government. For Corey, inheritance was more than just homes, belongings, or money. It has to do with continuity. Now, the estate serves as a physical reminder of his grandfather's impact and a lasting bond with the man who, possibly unintentionally, influenced both his personal and professional life. It functioned as a physical anchor for the family in many respects, allowing the past and present to coexist together. The television program that made the Harrison family famous worldwide was another instance of Pawn Stars. As a result of the show's popularity, Old Man was supposed to move from the bustling streets of Las Vegas into a more opulent home to represent decades of pawn industry labor. Despite all the fame and wealth that accompanied it, the elderly man persevered. For him, family simply came first. Because he believed in family, unity, and shared ownership, he included Corey in the estate property. It meant that the Harrison name would carry on the tradition of diligence, devotion, and entrepreneurship that had defined their ascent to fame. Additionally, it guaranteed that Corey would inherit stewardship rather than wealth, and would play a significant role in the family's history. Even though you may believe you've heard it all, Corey became extremely wealthy after the old man passed away. 6 high-end vehicles. The old man Harrison, Richard, was well known for many things, but his passion for vintage cars was one of his most ardent interests. He accumulated an amazing collection of antique cars throughout the years, which was a reflection of both his success and his character. His garage, which housed classic models like the 1963 Chrysler Imperial, the 1966 Imperial Convertible, the 1962 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and the 1957 Chevrolet 150, was a living museum of American automotive history. It was bold, elegant, and full of personality. Each had a unique tale to tell, connected to the times they were from and the memories the elderly guy made of them. These were not merely luxuries. He was reminded of the post-war era, when automobiles stood for liberty, accomplishment, and pride, by these representations of craftsmanship and nostalgia. The elderly man had always had a little affinity for automobiles. Everyone in his family and among Pawn Stars viewers knew how much he loved cars. He was concerned about cars. He ensured that everything was maintained in perfect shape, from the interior upholstery to the chrome accents. He had a special fondness for his 1937 Oldsmobile and his 1955 Ford F-100 pickup, because they reflected his admiration for well-made, tough, yet understated design. These vehicles were more than just beautiful. They were reminders of his early years, when he was impoverished and, to be honest, working hard to support himself. The 1962 Lincoln Continental that his son Rick and grandson Corey gave him on Pawn Stars is arguably the most memorable vehicle in his collection. In order to restore it as a beautiful homage to their love and respect for him, the family paid about $25. That car served as a bridge across Harrison's generations, thanks to its iconic lines and signature doors. Beyond merely being a collection of metal and engines, the old man's cars served as a bridge of memories and values after his passing. It is thought that Corey was left with at least some of this extremely treasured collection, even though it was never disclosed which family members received which particular cars. Given that Corey shared his grandfather's love of American tradition and craftsmanship, the car gift would have been very meaningful on a sentimental level. In addition to being cherished family treasures, Corey saw these cars as priceless mementos of the man who instilled in him the importance of perseverance, a love of history, and the delight of collecting items with a backstory. A car may have worth to many people, but to the elderly man, these qualities were longevity, style, and durability. Fifth, the capacity to identify counterfeit goods. One of the most priceless gifts Corey Harrison inherited from his grandfather Richard the Old Man Harrison was a keener sense of authenticity rather than a tangible item, the uncommon capacity to differentiate authentic gems from convincing impersonations. This ability is essential in the pawnbroking industry. Numerous things, including jewelry, antiques, and historical treasures, come through the gold and silver pawn shop every day. The distinction between a real collectible and a fake could result in gains or losses of thousands of dollars. No one knew this better than the old man. He gained an intuitive understanding of craftsmanship, materials, and provenance over the course of decades in the industry. This was not merely information from books. It was knowledge gained via bargaining, experience, and a few missteps. Growing up in that setting, Corey saw these lessons directly and learned to trust his judgment when assessing authenticity and value, as well as to look past appearances. Corey has observed his grandfather's quiet efficiency at work from a very young age. The elderly guy handled objects in a particular way, shifting them in and out of his hands, feeling their weight in his palms, and picking up on details that most people would overlook. He would educate Corey that authenticity can be found in the small things, like the stitching on an antique coat or the patina on an ancient coin. Eventually, Corey began to follow the same patterns, turning intuition into observation. The audience could see that Corey had a reputation of his own. By the time Pawn Stars gained notoriety, he frequently challenged merchants on their claims, questioned origin myths, and pointed out contradictions. The shop and show fans respected and trusted Corey because, although he didn't always have his grandfather's famed accuracy, he also came very near to having an eye for fakes. This innate talent is unique since it goes beyond simply recognizing the objects. The elderly man, who understood people on a deeper level, correctly stated that a pawnbroker is about more than just goods. The key is to read the person on the other side of the counter. It's possible that a phony story would lead to a phony product, which Corey would also receive. Realizing that not everyone was lying to him, but yet knowing that honesty needed to be confirmed rather than presumed, he learned to walk a tightrope between mistrust and empathy. This mindset turned into one of his most effective strategies for managing the family business without suffering needless losses while maintaining the level of professionalism upon which the Gold and Silver Pawn Store was founded. Understanding what is genuine in people, not just things, is achieved by turning the capacity to recognize fakes into a definition of existence. The Golden and Silver Pawn Shop is number 4. The Harrison family's heritage has long been centered around the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, a company founded on years of hard labor, trust, and negotiation. Established in 1988 by Richard the Old Man Harrison and his son Rick, the shop started out as a tiny, unassuming enterprise before expanding to become one of the most well-known pawn shops globally, in large part because of the popularity of Pawn Stars on the History Channel. The elderly man came to represent the shop's identity over time. His composed yet authoritative demeanor shaped its culture and established a benchmark for conducting business. Every transaction behind the counter was weighed carefully, fairly, and with his influence. However, as age slowed him down, the elderly guy made sure his legacy would carry on without a hitch. He started grooming his grandson Corey Harrison to assume a leadership position in the shop long before he passed away, guaranteeing that the family business would continue to thrive for many years to come. One of the most intentional and significant elements of the old man's mentoring was this slow transfer of accountability. Instead, the insulating Corey from the reality of the industry, he supported experiential learning, letting him make his own errors and grow from them. Before advancing to deal negotiation and major transaction management, Corey began at the absolute bottom, sweeping floors, cleaning display cases, and helping customers. The old guy taught him the same principles that had made the store famous with every step: integrity, accuracy, and reliability. Corey was already a vital component of the shop's everyday operations by the time of his grandfather's death, and Rick and the entire crew trusted him. This foresight preserved the stability and prosperity of the firm by ensuring a smooth leadership transition and reducing the turmoil that frequently follows a founder's departure. However, a new chapter in the family's history began with the old man's passing. The leadership had now been divided between Rick and Corey, who would take care of running the Gold and Silver Pawn Store independently. As the building's principal owner, Rick took on the role of spokesperson, concentrating on making strategic plans. In order to ensure that everyday operations were properly handled, Corey assumed the role of full-time manager of the shop. With the rise of the old man, this state was reminiscent of a time when Corey handled all of the business's daily operations and underground planning, while Rick concentrated on the company's public image and larger issues. The store thrived as long as shared management remained in place, preserving its standing as a unique gem in Las Vegas pop culture and business. In the day-to-day operations of almost every aspect, some of the raw old man was still present. The Golden Silver Pawn Shop is more than simply a business. It is a symbol of the Harrison family's steadfastness and unity. From the utmost respect shown between the parties involved in a transaction to the appreciation of the history or timeliness of antique craftsmanship, every object there has a tale to tell, just like the family. For Corey, maintaining a portion of the company went beyond simple ownership in order to honor the founder and maintain the business's integrity. Building on the dedication, Corey works day and night to preserve the elderly man's vision and preserve the legacy that hard effort and family commitment can make dreams come true. This idea unfolds for everyone to witness. A solid memorial to the elderly man's life, and, in the end, a generation-spanning sign of achievement, demonstrating that his knowledge and insights are the driving force behind each transaction completed within well-known premises. 3 important lessons in life. Richard, the elderly Harrison, gave his grandson Corey a number of gifts. The lessons he learned from his 21 years of service in the U.S. Navy were arguably the most significant. The elderly man was a sailor who had to learn discipline, responsibility, and tenacity the hard way before he became well known on Pawn Stars. His Navy service influenced his outlook on life and helped to establish the values that would eventually guide his career and family life. After serving on several ships and in a variety of duties, he developed his ability to adjust to new situations, adhere to protocol, and accept accountability for his actions. He developed a strong appreciation for hard work and organization as a result of these experiences, which he maintained with him even after his military career was over. Growing up with his grandfather meant that Corey learned the same lessons from him, not from lectures, but from the old man's constant example of honesty and reliability. The old man's perseverance and discipline served as the foundation for Corey's own work ethic. He taught his grandson that it took time to succeed. It calls for perseverance, dedication, and the capacity to face disappointments head-on. The old man's Navy days were often a topic of talk at the gold and silver pawn shop. He would then explain to Corey that being a leader means serving with humility and strengths. The elderly man had lived through difficult times, from lengthy deployments at sea or in other military activities, to the difficulties of supporting a family on a meager salary after leaving the military. But rather than becoming hardened, he gained perspective and character from those experiences. He taught Corey that perseverance, or the capacity to stick with a plan even in the face of uncertainty, is what life is all about. That way of thinking became a fundamental part of Corey's approach to leadership, business, and life. In addition to teaching Corey discipline, the elderly guy also instilled in him a sense of hierarchy and teamwork. The Navy taught both of these qualities, which are crucial in the family company. Like aboard a naval ship, everyone has a part to play in the pawning store, and success is a result of their collaboration and respect for one another. Corey was often reminded by the old guy that having authority did not include giving instructions. It involves identifying people's strengths and assisting them in creating their best work. The lesson aided in the development of the firm, equitable and compassionate leadership style that has come to define Corey's leadership attributes. Corey would quickly learn to trust his team to run the shop's day-to-day operations while he upheld his high standards, just as the elderly man had once trusted his shipmates to do their jobs. One characteristic that set the Harrison family apart across the decades was their united purpose and respect for authority, which came from the military principles that were inherited from corporate leadership. 2. A little cash. Richard, the elderly guy Harrison, had amassed an astounding net worth of approximately $8 million at the time of his death, the outcome of decades of diligence, astute business judgment, and his crucial contribution to making the gold and silver pawn shop a worldwide sensation through the popular Pawn Stars television series. It took time to build this wealth. It stood for years of perseverance, fortitude, and cautious handling. The old man's path was one of perseverance and strategic development, from his early hardships in the Navy to operating a little pawn store with few resources. His family received a share of his estate, which included investments and cash assets, when he died in 2018. In order to manage the estate and make sure his father's intentions were followed, his son, Rick, was appointed the chief administrator. Corey Harrison was one of the recipients, receiving a portion of his grandfather's fortune as a financial bequest that represented trust and acknowledgement of his place in the Harrison family's history. Corey had inherited money from the old guy, but it was much more than that. It was an extension of duty and heritage. After years of working with his grandfather, Corey had come to view money as a tool to get opportunity and stability rather than as an objective in and of itself. The elderly man never boasted about his wealth. He was a firm believer in leading a modest life and making prudent investments, maintaining his business, and providing for his family. The way Corey handled his inheritance was likewise determined by that society. He viewed it as an addition to the business ideas the elderly man had taught him, rather than as newfound fortune. Principles that valued hard labor and were economical in the long run. There was a purpose associated with each dollar. His grandfather had worked long hours to build a prosperous family business. The old man's will was carried out in a very methodical and formal manner, remarkably evident from the personality's traits, demeanor, and sequence. However, he had taken the difficult choice to leave out one of his sons, Christopher, from the fortune, even though he had included the majority of his immediate family, whether by blood or through his Wang caparous will. Some may find this shocking, but it shows how concerned the elderly man is about accountability and fair play in the family. By outlining the beneficiaries in detail in his will, any misunderstandings or disputes over his estate after his passing would be resolved. This bequest also indicate that Corey was not merely the beneficiary of familial favoritism, but rather that his grandfather himself trusted him. It validates years of diligence, loyalty, and commitment to the family enterprise. Keep an eye out for our greatest inheritance. Fans will be shocked to learn that Corey became extremely wealthy after the old man passed away. One's heritage and recollections. The most significant present that Corey Harrison received from his grandfather, Richard the Old Man Harrison, went beyond material inheritances of money, real estate, and a successful business. Instead, it was the priceless possession of memories and an enduring family heritage. These recollections are not limited to pictures or Pawn Star episodes. Years of working alongside his grandfather have molded Corey's heart into these live experiences. The elderly gentleman was more than just a business associate. He shaped Corey's identity as a mentor, father figure, and guiding influence. They spent a lot of time together behind the gold and silver pawn shop counter. Numerous discussions and enjoyable family times frequently counterbalanced the demands of celebrity. Corey's perspective on life, family, and what it means to leave a legacy was shaped by those experiences. The pawn shop's walls still reverberate with the lessons, laughter, and companionship they shared, serving as a constant reminder that although the old man is no longer with us, his presence is still very much alive. Corey clearly inherited the spirit of the Harrison family as a result of inheriting those memories. When Corey was subjected to such things, his grandfather's principles of respect, integrity, and fortitude were evident in all he did. The elderly man was taught his lesson through humorous, yet sage stories, which caused him to miss it within. He preached that without humility, there was no such thing as hollow success. Fame should not take precedence over family. Such teachings spread beyond the boundaries of that shop's operations and affected everything that had to do with Corey. In the back of his mind, his grandfather's voice hears everything Corey does, ranging from his interactions with his followers and staff to his own decision-making. But because to the Pawn Stars brand's cultural influence, the old man's legacy endures. From its humble beginnings as a family business, it has grown to become a symbol of Americana and enterprise. And the main reason for this is the comedy and genuineness the elderly man brought to the show. He became a fan favorite because of his dry-as-dust demeanor and no-nonsense. But he was able to connect with audiences across the country because of his candor. For Corey, maintaining the family continuity in terms of appearances on that show is simpler than maintaining his notoriety. It involves preserving his grandfather's performance and all that he stood for. Every performance turns into an homage to the impact the elderly man had, guaranteeing that the values of diligence, integrity, and family harmony that characterized his life will be seen by future generations. Here are the 9 amazing things that Corey Harrison acquired from the renowned elderly man. Please remember to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes glimpses at your favorite reality stars if you liked learning these secrets. For further more shocking disclosures about the Pawn Stars family, click the next video on your screen before leaving.